He's American
Yes,
treasure.
but I heard he is very difficult to work with.
Oh no, he's a total prick. He's been a prick since he was like on Saturday
in the
Night.
SNL days.
Yeah. But that's the American. That's it. That's the American.
That's the American dream.
Yeah.
Be a prick, get famous, cash in, call it a day.
Some might say you have to be one, to be famous.
I would never say that about you, Rich.
I'm not famous, so
500,000 people say differently.
I'm the worst kind of prick. I'm an unfamous prick.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just
a prick for no reason.
Welcome to the show, where air takes the flow. Lee and Rich on the mic.
Welcome to the AI Guys podcast, where we make artificial intelligence easy to understand for everyone. I'm your host, Lee Dixon, and as always, I'm joined by the man who is happy to supervise AI agents over human employees, Rich Swire. How are we doing today?
Great. I'm doing great. Yeah, feeling it.
Yeah, I'm feeling it too. We're gonna kind of keep a nice light episode today, but we're gonna talk about some pretty important topics as we're getting into 2026. And I think a lot of businesses are going to start to kind of shift priority around how agents are going to work inside of their organizations. So I figured today we could talk a little bit about the operating model of a modern company, kind of moving forward into the future, where organizational charts might shift a little bit, where teams might benefit first, all those kind of topics.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I mean, I think it's very clear now that we're entering into a kind of a new phase of AI. It feels like almost every hyperscaler has obviously made massive investments in the infrastructure, and now we're starting to see AI kind of permeate through all the tools, right, in our day-to-day lives. And so the next obvious step is every company is looking at this going, okay, great, my team is using tools and they're getting some acceleration out of that, and I'm starting to see, my meetings are being summarized, the reports.
CRM's getting filled out with the actual notes.
CRM has been used finally. People are sending, delivering their updates and their documents. Their presentations are starting to look AI-ish, right? They're putting their, generating their memes using Google Banana or whatever. So I think people are.
What a time to be alive, Rich.
It is. It's amazing, but it's clearly an accelerator.
Yeah.
Of human work, but where the promise is still kind of looming out there in the far distance on the horizon, and the promise of kind of AI agents, whether you call them robots or in the sense of like, if you're kind of thinking futuristically, if you're on a manufacturing floor, the robotics are doing kind of all the work of putting the car together, right? But in the knowledge worker world, agents obviously don't manifest into some sort of metallic being. They're just operating behind the scenes as software, but they still requires the same kind of thinking, right? When you think about building your business, whether you're, a software company or, in the finance world or healthcare, education, and you're dealing with information, you're not putting together parts of a car, but you're just kind of operating like any other normal knowledge-based business. You have to start thinking, though, like kind of like a manufacturer, as if you were to kind of break apart your business process, because you have to figure out what could be agentified, right? What can AI do for me? And it may not be as simple as, this whole role AI can do. Yeah,
fully automated, done.
But this role is only human. It's really more of like, well, if I took a human plus an agent or multiple agents, I'm going to define a new role or a new business process that can work together, and they can expedite and get more ROI out of that, right?
Sure.
And so you have to kind of re-underwrite your entire business if you feel like AI can come in and actually pick up a lot of the heavy lifting. For certain verticals, it's pretty easy to think, almost every vertical that we've dealt with, almost immediately you can think of 2 or 3 use cases where it's actually low impact. You can actually implement it very quickly. In most cases, companies are not doing a good job doing that process.
Right.
Like customer support is a great example, right? Where if you have an issue or with your company and you want to, call a 1-800 number or go on live chat or email support, most likely that response time is crap. The answer is crap. You have to wait days, whatever it is, right? Nobody has a great customer support experience. But now with AI agents, you could obviously train them on of the whole volume of everything to be known about your business, and they can give very verbose and very detailed answers, and they can do it immediately. So those are like low hanging fruit. That's the easy stuff. But when it comes to like what we're talking about in this episode, we're talking about if you really want it to kind of permeate through your whole organization, you know, top to bottom, you have to start thinking about, how do I take my current existing workforce and how do I start shifting them to become more AI first mindset?
Sure.
And how do I make them become more human in the loop, right? Where AI is starting to do a lot of the heavy lifting, a lot of the prep work, a lot of the transitional stuff that you normally would do in a workflow, and have the human workforce just kind of monitor and manage that, right? And so this is a jarring effect that I would say maybe 80-90% of employees out there are just not ready for today. And how do you do that? How do you get them ready to do that, right? You have to get buy-in. You have to convince them at some level that this is going to be good thing, that'll help them increase capacity, buy more time to do more things that could actually help the company grow and help the company be better at what they do, versus the remedial tasks, the repetitive tasks, some of the other stuff. But also you can introduce a completely new dynamic of how you think about what you do as a company, right? Because you take whatever product you're building, whatever you're doing, and you add AI on top of that, it by default, it becomes a new product. A great example would be, you know, let's say you're at a company let's say you're a consultant, right? That's a very common thing that people do out there. And, you know, you're a consultant, and what would you do as a consultant? You go in, you kind of gather information, you kind of apply your 2 cents, your experience to it. And then what do? Provide a plan and a report.
Yeah.
And so immediately, if you start incorporating AI if AI is in the room when you're listening, right? It's ambient noise. It's attending your meetings. It's attending your workshops. Then you've also trained AI on your processes, on your domain expertise, on your best practices.
Yeah.
And then you're using AI to generate your plan and your report. Your product hasn't changed necessarily in the sense of what the deliverable is. It's might expanded, but now you have AI is kind of building a lot of that, right? And you're able to do that at scale, whereas before you might only be able to do 3 or 4 clients a month because you have to write all this stuff, you have to build all this stuff. But now you've kind of created, like I said earlier in the show, you've become a manufacturer, right? You've created a system using AI as your manufacturing plant, and it's kind of, you're passing information to it, it's giving you back, and so forth.
Yeah,
so
you're building your own like custom agent factory in a way, right? Once you understand how these little parts of the business really run, I think this is what separates someone that's just in a space doing work. Like, you're using consultants for a good one. Like, I just know in the consulting business, I have to do X, Y, and Z, and then I hopefully can rinse and repeat that. Well, great. With X, Y, and Z, do you know how those now break up into specific functions to then move to the next part, like along the conveyor belt? Once you do, you might say, okay, X can be completely automated. Like you said, meetings, summary, scope of works, like all that kind of just data and documentation. AI loves to do that piece. Now, where it starts to lose is now being able to add the human flair, or now your domain expertise being able to kind of layer over that and now convey it to the customer better than probably AI can. But that agent human, maybe back to agent workflow is much more apparent today than it probably was, even just 6 months ago, how people are really using it in their day to day.
Yeah. And if you think about, it's interesting how, we talk about that history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. When you think of manufacturing, if you think
that's a good line, Rich.
Yeah. You like that? If you, I didn't come up with it.
I'm going to say you did.
When you think about, like manual labor, right? Manual labor has already gone through this evolution because what happened was, humans were doing all the work, and then they started creating machines, and the humans were working the machines, and now they're using robotics, and there's no humans in the warehouse floor.
Yeah.
And that same evolution has created scale and has created the capability of things that we never thought in a million years was possible, right? Like, for example, how Amazon can ship anything in the world in like a matter of like hours or less, or maybe a day, right?
Yeah.
And it's because they have machines working 24/7, moving boxes around, putting it into like their distribution system, right?
Yeah.
So as we shift from manual labor to intelligence, right?
Yeah, automated labor.
It's the same. We're going to go through that same process. We're going to go
Mhm.
through that same shift of how we construct or reconstruct our warehouses and our manufacturing plants, but we have to think of it more as intelligence. So as a consultant, you're selling intelligence, but you really need to start thinking as like a manufacturer. You would never think that way before because you're like, well, what I do takes a brain, right?
Sure.
I can't put this, and I can't hire anybody because my margins are too thin. And if I hire somebody, they're not going to be that good. I can't hire somebody with my experience, and maybe I'll hire a couple of people to help me do this and that and this. But even that requires me to scale my business, and I got to get more customers. And so you're always in this kind of fluidity that is hard to scale. And that's no different than what manufacturing went through 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Sure.
Now with intelligence being the cost of intelligence going to zero, you have the ability to scale, but you have to rethink and reimagine and re-underwrite how your business operates, right? So that's number one. I think you're going to start seeing people go through this transformation. And I think AI is running parallel to that in the sense that, how AI has evolved over the last year, it's starting to look and feel and operate much more like a human worker, right? Like when you think about the latest models that have come out, they're more reasoning models. And these agents, you give it a task and it goes off and does the task.
Yeah. It wants to go through steps and processes though. And
it might take 5 to 10 minutes.
Line.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We're moving away from the kind of search and query, ChatGPT, instant response experience being the dominating experience. I think that was what we started off, and that was the experience that we all came in, into and understanding how AI works. And we're like, prompting it and it's giving us answers. We're like, oh, this is amazing. But now we're actually giving it commands. It's going off and doing things. It might go through
the agency piece.
Right. Yeah. It might go through workflows. It might connect with other agents. It might come back 20, 30, 40 minutes later because it had to process all this or had to wait for somebody else to approve something, right? A human in the loop somewhere. But it's doing work at scale much faster and at the same level that one or multiple humans can do it. And I think that component, as you can imagine, there's a lot of heavy lifting to build that. You couldn't build Amazon overnight. You couldn't build, the Ford factory for cars overnight. You have to kind of think about the human adoption cycle and the lag that it requires us to to find the time in the day to reimagine what we're doing on a day-to-day basis in our businesses. We still are tethered to legacy code. We're still tethered to old ways. We still have a human workforce that's not adaptable.
Sure.
So there's a reality in why things take so long to change in the world is because you're not starting from scratch. If we said, okay, everybody, just throw away everything. We're going to start from scratch, reset the clock to zero, reset everybody's bank accounts to zero, reset your debt to zero, reset your company's workforce to zero. And let's start anew tomorrow.
Yeah.
You could probably get there a lot quicker because you have nothing legacy to worry about. But, you have a team, you have existing processes that are working for you. You might have a very successful business. Why change it, right? So that's the other component is most businesses that are doing really well or that are status quo and are happy with where they're at, nobody's hyper motivated to change because why would you? It's just more work, more pain, more stress. So really what's going to drive the next generation of businesses is new businesses, right? It's the people that are either that are either got laid off by Google or sitting around, with their dream and then they're going to innovate and launch it next year because AI finally gave them the way to do it, or somebody who sees an opportunity to capture, from companies that are basically hanging out doing stuff and status quo and saying, hey, I can compete now. And,
I have a better mousetrap I can put into the
so
workforce.
It's just the startups are going to dominate, right? And in this first cycle, and then the laggards are going to say, "Oh, geez, we should probably catch up now," and they'll put some energy into it. But I think when you think about the future workforce, I don't think anybody thinks for 1 second that there's not going to be many, many, many different AI agents that are going to be implemented within your business. There's certainly has to be some thought put to where do you start and how do I convince my existing workforce to adapt and adopt that. And then finally, how do I start thinking and about the future, maybe not 2-3 years, but maybe 5 to 10 years of either A, where I personally want to be, right? This is not just about companies. This is about people's personal journey, right? Their resume, their what's going to make me a valuable worker in 5 years. If I operated and built and trained and managed an AI workforce or an AI agent or multiple agents doing my role, you may not be employable, right? Because nobody wants you coming in and going, hey, I know how to do customer support, or I know how to do sales, or I know how to do XYZ. And they go, okay, great. I mean, so what kind of agents were you working with? What kind of AI workforce were you? Because we don't want 1X, we don't want the output of an employee that's only human. We want an output of a human plus 10X. We want to 10X your output because you have 10 agents working for you, right? So I think this is this is something everybody should be thinking of, if for no other reason, for their own personal journey in their life as they go through job to job. But if you're a company manager or executive or an owner or an entrepreneur, then this is absolutely should be, number one on your list of things to think about next year.
Yeah, I do think that the professional career development aspect, like if you have the time right now, or even in your off time, and you're trying to figure out ways to level up yourself, like for future employment or however you want to fit in, like the best way is to figure out ways to leverage AI to just show, like you said, where you can be in a supervisory role. And this is how you've spun up things to assist you. I think when you're talking about businesses that are established, like really what they should be focusing on, if they haven't already, let's say for Q1 of 2026, it should be trying to rethink how organizational charts just from department to department work, where at the end of this year, we want AI to be doing somewhere in that realm of, let's say on the low end, 30%, maybe on the higher end, 50% of the current work that is human. And not to say that you needed to go and gut your departments to make up for that difference, but there should be some way of saying, how do I get people right now into like a supervisory role where they're going to be managing these types of agents in that work that's being done, and it elevates them into high value tasks. And in the future, if I have people that are retiring or leaving, and I've now gathered the tribal knowledge, and I don't have to worry about hiring 3 people to replace Sally because she's been here for 30 years and she just did so much, then it's like, great. I now have Sally, Sally had an assistant, Jim, who can essentially now manage all of the agents that are going to take on a lot of Sally's work. And as a business, if you don't already have that in mind, by the end of 2026 or early 2027, you're really going to be behind, I think, the 8 ball. Because right now, what you're seeing in the early adopters is that they've gone leaps and bounds ahead of competition, and they are not slowing down to let you catch up. They're figuring out other ways that they can keep accelerating AI usage inside of their workforce.
Yeah, absolutely. I think next year you're going to see AI usage skyrocket. You're going to see companies that are obviously benefiting from that are charging for usage, are going to be the ones that are that's going to be the new, that's the new currency, right?
That's an organic growth model that every business should look at.
And because every company's going to look at that and go, okay, I've got one human employee, but if I give him or her AI and I expect them to use it, right? So usage is going to go up, and I want them to burn 10, 20, 50 million tokens a month, generating what they normally would do. They basically, it's a multiplier. They become a 10X employee.
Yeah.
And everybody is I always find it interesting because I still think we're human and we tend to lean to be pessimistic, but almost every time we talk about AI or we talk about how it's going to change businesses, I think they typically focus on like, okay, it's either replacing employees, cost cutting, whatever, wherever their mind goes toward.
Yeah.
But I always look at it and go, listen, if you're going to be the first one to adopt AI and incorporate it in a meaningful way, agentically throughout your organization, and you give every single one of your employees, 10X, what they can do, then you're talking about growth. You're talking about capturing market share from people who are not adopting AI. You're not going to be firing anybody. You're going to be hiring, right? You're going to be hiring to scale into and also continue to build out more and more agents. And so, it's very rare that people think growth, right? They always think survive. They're like in a survival state. But I think for the first time, we use that one example of a consultant that could do one or two or three projects a month, can do 6 and 7 and 10. I mean, you could double your business, just by thinking creatively about what you do on a day-to-day basis, what your product is. You can not only save time and energy building your product, but you can make your product 10 times better.
Yep.
So, and think about what that means. Take AI out of it. Let's just say there was some magic juice that you could drink this morning, like a protein shake that I could say you could do the workday is no longer 8 hours. You can get 10 times more done in that 8 hours if you drink.
Wasn't there that movie Limitless? They were
absolutely. You would take a pill. We have no problem taking pills. If there was a pill that could make me work 10x what I could do today, I'd take it, even if I gave me diarrhea, right? Which they all do, by the way.
Great.
Now this may cause anal leakage and diarrhea. We're probably now YouTube's going to shut us down. But my point is like they're selling pharmaceuticals.
No, stop saying things, Rich.
Sorry,
putting things into the transcript.
Disclaimer. But we would do it because of the side effects. Yeah. But God forbid if we said that there's this really clean, AI can really come in. It's not going to give you any sort of side effects.
Sure.
There's like this apprehension because too good to be true. But I think the conclusion I think we want to make on this is, the sooner you adapt and adopt, the bigger the return is going to be, both for you as an individual and also whatever company you happen to be working for and your life in general. And we've always said this from episode 1 is, AI is the great compressor of time, right? You're getting time back. How you choose to spend that time you get back, whether it's spending time with your kids, exercising, reading a book, or doing more to build your business, or doing things that would help your business grow better than the monotonous work you do, is up to you. But the bottom line is I don't think there's any human on earth that doesn't want to get more time. And I think if you think of it that, it might take time to get there, right? You're going to have to invest some energy and time and educate yourself. But ultimately, we've seen it. I mean, in our business, we would never be able to operate the scale we operate without AI. And I think we have the benefit of being an AI first company, but I think everybody will get there at some point.
Absolutely. And for everyone listening, thanks again for joining us on this episode. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to stay in touch. Also, check out our Substack for more content, which will be linked to this episode to continue this discussion. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care, everyone.
Takes the flow, leave rich on the mind, ready to explore.